For more on the AirAsia tragedy, Michael Planey joins me. He's with H&M Planey Consultants. He's an expert on travel and transportation. We want to welcome you to the broadcaster. Searchers may have found this section, so give us an idea. Where are these found on the plane? How important are they? What's the next process if this is indeed what they've discovered?
Well, on the Airbus A320, the black boxes are located in the lower aft section under the tail of the aircraft. So they're behind the cargo holds. They're in a secured panel area. They're not in with the baggage or anything else. And they really are the key. They call them black boxes, but if you've seen the pictures, obviously they're bright orange. They have pingers that are attached to them to allow them to drop microphones or hydrophones into the water so they can pick up the sound of these beacons that are attached. And they record all of the data that is pertinent for the flight systems on the aircraft. So it'll know everything about what the avionics were seeing, what the weather radar was showing them, what the state of the fuel was, where the flight controls were. And the second black box is the cockpit voice recorder. And this one is really key in helping to understand what was going on in the cockpit. What actions were the pilots taking? What were they saying to each other? What alarms or bells or anything else were going off in the cockpit at the time that the aircraft was lost? If you marry the flight data with the cockpit voice recorders, you get a very complete picture of everything that was happening to that aircraft at the time of the loss.
So there are pieces of the puzzle. You put the puzzle together. You have a general idea of what happened. How long a process? Let's say they find it today, they bring it up. How long? What are we looking at in terms of actually marrying all the information and coming up with a concrete analysis?
Once they recover the boxes and get them securely transported to a facility that can offload the data, they can begin an immediate analysis of what they see. And sometimes you have to look very finely through the data to find the one anomaly somewhere. But in this particular case, it seems that the speculation is leading towards a very abrupt event. It seems as though that they should be able to find at least the first red flag or series of red flags relatively quickly after the data has been securely offloaded.
Michael, one of the questions that comes to mind for me, and I'm sure for others, this is a heavily trafficked area, and it seems like there were at least a half dozen flights that were able to thread the needle. Why is it this one ran into problems? I mean, what do you think it is?
Well, that's what we need that data to tell us. The leading theory right now has to do with engine icing, and this is a very rare occurrence. It's not the same as people think of when you get an aircraft de-iced before you take off. They spray antifreeze down on the wings and on the fuselage. Engine icing is very different. Engine icing only happens at very high altitude, and it happens with exceptionally dry, almost microcrystals of ice that are practically invisible to weather radar that you would have conventionally either ground-based or in the aircraft. And what happens is they're as fine as bakery flour. It blows into the engine where the temperatures are warm enough to then cause it to melt. And as that happens, the water sticks to the surfaces, cools the engine temperature down, and then allows for ice to build up, not at the front, not at the leading edges or on the turbine blades, but deep within the engine, which can cause surge or stall or compressor failure. And it's a very unusual occurrence. But in the area where this aircraft was flying, it's known as the Intertropical Convergence zone. You get a lot of highly convective thunderstorms, which means that the north and south trade winds come together. All of a sudden, that air rapidly rises from sea level up to as high as 30 or 40,000 feet, and it carries an enormous amount of moisture with it when it does that. Those are the kind of conditions that you see that cause engine icing and this sort of crystal icing, not the normal airframe icing. A lot of times, the unfortunate thing is as a pilot is diverting around a known thunderstorm that they can see in front of them, that the radar shows to them, the icing conditions exist around the edges of these thunderstorms. So the possibility is there that the engines were ingesting the ice, perhaps had a compressor failure, perhaps had an engine stall, they lost power, and then it was an unrecoverable situation.
Let me ask you one final question. This self-briefing, James Chow talked about it. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal about it, that the pilot's kind of on his own. It's this self-briefing and not getting this support that generally a lot of pilots get around the world. Does there need to be some uniformity when it comes to that? And were you surprised at this kind of anomaly? Or is it an anomaly?
Well, It is an anomaly. It's not the most ideal circumstance that you want to have. You want to have a standardization of the data that's provided to the pilots, of the information that's provided to them before they take off, while they're en route. I think this is one of the areas that will come under increased scrutiny as the investigation continues, to see if there was some sort of a misstep along the way that can be a part of the crash itself. But for now, we just don't have enough data.
Well, Michael, thank you for coming in. Certainly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Putting everything into context, which is important. Thanks again.